my current position is I'm the J.W. Nevo Fellow in Economics at the Australian School of Business at the University of New South Wales in Sydney. But I'm also the Airport Economist, and I'm also the part-time advisor to Jay Weatherill, the Premier. So that's why I'm in Adelaide. It's funny, when I was a kid growing up in Adelaide, I wanted to work for Qantas, I wanted to be a politician, and I wanted to somehow represent Australia. And in some ways, I've sort of done all three. I've been quite lucky. I got to work for the ACTU and work in politics. I've got to work for Austrade and be a diplomat sort of representing Australia. I don't work for Qantas as a flight attendant or a pilot, but Qantas fly me all over the world. So my time as a student here in economics at Adelaide was a fantastic time because the Hawke government had been elected and Paul Keating was Treasurer. So economics was in everyone's lounge room. People really got into economics and Australia was sort of transforming itself for the better. The core skills I learned here at Adelaide University were partly technical skills and partly, if you like, interpersonal skills. So in economics at Adelaide, they gave you very, very good technical training. I've studied in the US and around the world, and the core skills you got here in economics are the best in the world. They're world class. But more importantly, you were mixing with kids from Southeast Asia, from international backgrounds, kids from the country. You really got to understand a multicultural society. You got great international exposure, and because we had teachers that were advising the Treasurer or the Prime Minister, we got great insight into business and politics. So you put the three together, you really got some very good core skills here at Adelaide, particularly in the economics school. Looking for a job, well, I was pretty lucky when I was a graduate. I think it's tougher now, but I would say really do what you're interested in. A lot of people get advised by their parents to, make sure you do accounting or make sure you do this because you need something to fall back on. Well, I would really do what you're passionate in. I think if you're very passionate about what you do, you'll naturally succeed, I think. And the other thing is getting a cadetship or getting some work experience while you're studying can give you a bit of insight, a bit of a leg up into the workforce. I had a Reserve Bank cadetship, and that really helped me get into the workforce. And also, I travelled a bit. At the end of second year, I went to Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, travelled around Asia a bit, and so my later job with Austrade, I had sort of all that exposure at a young age. So do what you're passionate in, work part-time, and take the opportunity to travel the world, particularly with globalisation and Australia being so close to Asia and the Asian century. My first job in economics was with the Reserve Bank. And the Reserve Bank paid me to do honours, and I wrote my honours thesis at the Reserve Bank. So I had a lucky break in the sense that my study and my work went together well, and also they gave me some very practical projects about unemployment and inflation and about trade with Asia. And so that gave me great practical insight, and it related very closely to my study. And to be honest with you, I think my working world and my studying world haven't been that much different. In the working world, you've got to write shorter essays or put things on Twitter. So things are a bit shorter, but the intellectual skills you get here at Adelaide University in economics have very, very good application when you start working. One memorable moment in my life was I got sent to Milan to interview Megan Gale, the very famous model, and a lot of people thought that was a very tough job. They thought I was going to the World Bank to do an infrastructure seminar, but I got sent by Austrade to interview Megan Gale. That was a memorable moment. And another memorable moment probably was when I was here at Adelaide University, and there was a prize called the Eric Russell Prize, named after a very famous professor here in the 70s, and I won the prize named after him on the same week I got the Reserve Bank cadetship. So they're very memorable moments. Do you have to be mathematical? Well, maths helps in economics, but it's not everything. Joan Robinson, the famous Cambridge economist, she used to say, maths is a good tool, it's a good slave, but it's not the master. Great economists really have to have great economic intuition, they have to be great communicators, they have to be very good writers. I found generally as a working economist that doing a lot of applied statistics, I actually find that's been very, very useful when you're compiling data when you find original data, when you look at relationships between things, I find that very helpful. So I wouldn't say maths is an obstacle, it's something that's just useful. Well, I have a fantastic new job with the Premier of South Australia, Jay Weatherall. When we looked at Adelaide and we looked at South Australia, we noticed a lot of people leaving the state and leaving the city. But they were going on to be the head of Oxford University or running the Daily Telegraph in London or running a major business in China and India, San Francisco. So what Jay Weatherall wanted me to do is actually find the Adelaide expatriates from around the world, Generation Expat, and actually see what their ideas were for the City of Adelaide and for the future of South Australia. And Adelaide University is a very important part of that because many Adelaide University alumni are now doing wonderful things in Asia and Latin America and New York and London. And a lot of overseas students such as Raymond Lim and Peter Ong, who are very senior in, say, Singapore and China, are actually Adelaide University graduates. Even Tony Tan, the President of Singapore, went to Adelaide Uni. They're there as a resource for us. And the other thing too is Adelaide's such a interesting, creative, dynamic city, very livable city, and South Australians are doing a lot of good things overseas, and the university's a really key bridge between generation export at home and generation expat overseas and all the great overseas students that have come here. I wrote the Airport Economist for two reasons. One is I always wanted to write an airport book. The other reason is I always wanted to write an economics book. So I thought, well, I can't do both, so I'll write the Airport Economist instead. And it came about because many economists travel around the world for 3 days in each country, you know, and I even counted myself. I think I've been to 57 countries in the past 5 years. So you can't see that country for any longer than probably 3 days each. But somehow, you've got to be an expert. You know, it doesn't matter whether you go to Brazil or China or Indonesia or South Africa. People go, well, you've just been there, what do you reckon? So I actually thought you actually spent a lot of time at the airport, so that would be a good name for it. But it's really about, if you go to Singapore and you notice that Singapore's very good at producing engineers and superannuation consultants, but not many ballet dancers, what's driving their policy? So the Airport Economist is sort of like Freakonomics on an international scale. What is quirky about economy? Why do the Israelis like Tim Tams? Why is Megan Gale plugging hand cream in Milan? And what's the opportunity there for Australia? Oh, well, I've just been in Argentina, and they love a good tango in Argentina, and I wrote about that in my chapter, Don't Buy From Me, Argentina. And I'm also finding too that pretty hot sun in Australia with climate change, so probably a good idea to wear a hat when you're strolling the sunny streets of Adelaide.